I'm Imad Khan, the CEO and founder of Mercury. This is Series T, where we talk to the greatest and best entrepreneurs and investors, force them to have tea with us live on air. Today we have Brad Flora, who is the visiting partner at Combinator right now. Previously, he was an entrepreneur, and he's also invested in how many companies?
About 150.
Only 150 companies, just a few. So we're excited to have you here.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So you studied, I believe, English, and then you did journalism, masters. How did you go from that to like starting a startup?
It was either the CIA or journalism for me. So I went into the CIA recruiting process, which was pretty interesting.
Why was CIA the only other option?
Well, I figured I was good at talking to people and getting information from them. And so then...
You thought you'd be a spy?
Well, I thought I'd either be a spy or a journalist.
Yeah.
So I decided to go to journalism school. And while I was there, I started building websites and trying to figure out what news and information could and should look like online. Yeah. And so Windy Citizen was like a crowdsourced, community-driven, kind of like a Reddit type.
This was your first startup?
Yeah, this was my first company. It's just a bootstrapped product. It was basically like Reddit just for Chicago.
Okay.
And this was before all the subreddits really took off, which kind of happened after Dig collapsed.
Yeah.
And we had like 100,000 local people that were reading news and sharing links to cool things happening around the city. So I ended up having to figure out, well, how do you monetize an audience like that, which led to my interest in online advertising. I spent a year traveling the country, just showing up in newspapers with a deck and news of great click-through rates. And was able to sign like the Chicago Tribune, the Houston Chronicle, a bunch of newspapers to pay me like $3 to $5K a month for a SaaS product that would make these trafficable widgets that they could run through their ad platforms. I applied to Y Combinator then for Summer 11 with that. And
that's like a huge journey just before you got there.
Yeah. Went full on from editorial, like I'm going to figure out the future of news, to figuring out what could monetization look like. And then ultimately we ended up pivoting after YC. So
are you a big tea drinker?
Sure.
And then I guess it's roast, so it probably doesn't have any caffeine or anything. Okay, so you get into YC. I think we could keep talking about this all day, but I want to change subjects a little bit. Tell us a book that you've read that has changed your kind of way of thinking or like what you've done afterwards.
So a couple years ago, this movie came out, Ready Player One. Yeah. Obviously, it's based on like a young adult novel, and I thought I really liked the movie actually, but I thought, oh, I'll read the book, and the book was really interesting. It's kind of like a Snow Crash for Dummies or whatever, but.
That's harsh. I think it's a much more entertaining read than Snow Crash.
It was very entertaining. But one thing that I thought was very interesting in it was this idea that...
Had you read Snow Crash before this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, was this idea that, in this like weird dystopian future of Ready Player One, this very simplified dystopian future of Ready Player One, everyone lives very simple, they dress very simply, and everything comes to them like through the mail, and everything is interchangeable. And then when they're in the game world, everything is interchangeable and very ephemeral. All their possessions are coming and going. And I got to thinking that my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, she was became a subscriber of Rent the Runway Unlimited, where you can just kind of swap out your clothing and get new clothes for every month you're getting new outfits. And so this kind of idea of like, in the future we will own a lot fewer of the things that we're interacting with. Yeah. Maybe it'll be renting, maybe it'll look like something else, other models of ownership. But that actually led to like me investing in Feather, which is this great company that does like furniture rental as a service. But the impetus for that investment came from reading this book and really thinking like, there's something here. This is kind of where we're going. Our relationship to the things that we own is going to change, I think, in the future.
I think we first met back in 2016 when we were talking about investing.
Yep.
You were just getting into it. I was just getting into investing.
Yep.
I guess you sold just in 2014?
Yep.
Did you start investing straight away? Were you investing before then?
Yeah, I sold my company in 2014, and then about a year after that, I started investing. I basically would go to demo day, the YC demo day, listen to all the pitches, and try to talk to a dozen or so companies that were really exciting.
Yep.
And then write checks. And I was writing the smallest checks that I thought people would take at the time because I wanted to learn. 5K, 10K, 15K sometimes. I wanted to, learn and be involved and get better at angel investing. So that was kind of how I started.
I find that often investors make like the sickest picks right at the start. Like, well, did you make like a really great company that's killed it? I
did, because I felt like I was very new to things. I was just talking to a lot of people and trying to listen a lot.
Yeah.
And so if I feel like every angel investor has a couple people that really help get them into it. And for me, that was Tikan from Parse.
Yeah.
And so I remember he told me, hey, there's this company Razorpay in the batch, and I'd like their pitch. He's like, you should totally do that one. As they were on my list.
Tikon was like your angel mentor.
Yeah, mentor, godfather, however you want to put it. So so yeah, that's one I did really early on. That is really exciting, and they're building a really promising company.
Yeah. That's like an Indian mobile payments thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think it kind of started as like Stripe for India, but now they're doing so much more than that.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So that actually ties into like the whole global investments thing. So you were, I think, one of the first investors that went like super heavy into like making a lot of these kind of global bets.
Yep.
Was that the trigger, like that Razorpay investment that got into it?
I started raising micro funds for each YC batch using AngelList. The winter 17 batch was the first one that I did that for. And I was sitting in the audience at demo day, and I was planning to invest $500,000 or so into a handful of companies in that batch. And that batch in particular had a slew of really strong companies building products in Africa, in India, and Latin America. And as I was sitting in the audience, I just had this kind of moment of clarity where I realized, hey, there's a pretty good chance that YC's right and that these are really good founders and it's not just some kind of weird sideshow, which I think maybe investors kind of had that feeling around some of the
international. This is 2017.
Yeah, like this is after Rappi came through. But still, I think there was always this feeling of like otherness, like really? Are these going to be big companies? Is it risky to invest?
I mean, tons of investors, even now, but definitely back then had a thesis that they would not do anything outside the US.
But it occurred to me that like, if it turns out that these are good companies, there was in that demo day, there was a company making like a new smoothie machine for the office, and then right after it was a company building a new cable provider for Nigeria.
Yeah.
And if both of those companies are 100% successful, one of them is going to be Comcast for the continent, and the other is still going to be working in the kitchens at startup offices.
Yeah.
And so as I was thinking
the opportunities seem bigger.
Yeah, and just literally while I was thinking about that, sitting in the audience, having this kind of moment of clarity, I got an email from Gary Tan, like literally in real time. And he just said exactly what I was thinking. He said, you should start a fund that just focuses on these international companies.
He knew you had a mini fund already.
No, he knew nothing. He literally just...
So why did he pick you to email?
I don't know. Maybe he emailed 20 people for all I know, right?
You were the chump that did it.
I'm the chump that jumped on the grenade, maybe. But it's been a great grenade. So, but it was just interesting to me that I wasn't the only one sitting in the audience kind of that got the wheels in motion.
I think he tweeted about this as well, Gary.
Yeah, maybe. So I went and I raised $500,000 to put to work in that summer fund for the summer the summer 17 batch, and I mean that's been really strong. We've got 3 of the investments that I made are already up like 7 or 8x over where we invested in them at, and I did funds for the 5 batches after that, just focused on international companies, and I also ran funds for the U.S. focused companies too, and those funds are doing really well, but the international stuff has really been exploding.
Yeah. So I've noticed in general, like to be an international company and get in YC, it's harder. Like the metrics are bigger. Like these companies often have are further along, right? Is that a trend?
I don't have numbers behind that, but I would say in general, there's certainly a filter on just ambition, desire, and just how bad people want to be successful. There's a lot of people who want to do a startup for, I don't know, social reasons, stylistic reasons. It seems like a good idea. But if you're going to travel across the globe and uproot your life for even 3 months and raise money from strangers, like that, those are people
one thing I've noticed, I'm an investor in Rappi and Grin, they became Grow. They just have like a hunger to them that sometimes they really think they're someone else will take this opportunity. They have to grow as fast as freaking possible. It's like a hunger that I mean you do see it sometimes in US startups, but it's just almost every LATAM or India startup. I see it all the time. And it's kind of intimidating.
And then I think structurally, just being able to come to the US, do Y Combinator, raise a ton of money from US investors, and then take that back somewhere else.
You think that's a major advantage?
Yeah, absolutely. Major, your network has grown, your understanding of things has grown, your willpower and will to win.
Is it like a mindset arbitrage as well? Like there's a Silicon Valley mindset that they take back with them?
I think so. The Razorpay guys, if you follow them, if you go back into the early days of Raise. I love doing this, by the way, is if there's a startup that you're really excited about and impressed by today, go find their blog, go find their Twitter account, and go back to the early days.
Yeah.
And look at how they were presenting themselves then. And I find that can be so encouraging.
Like what do you? Oh, because they sound like noobs.
Yeah, they sound like noobs, and you realize like they're, GitHub's a great example. Just reading the early, the first 6 months of GitHub blog posts, or Coinbase. I remember they had this big long blog post early on, and it was just like, we keep your Bitcoin in this closet with a really good lock on it. And at the time, that was like a top post on Hacker News. And now that's like a giant company, But those are the things that they were dealing with then.
Well, they're literally keeping it in the closet.
And so like if you go and look at Razorpay's early stuff, they had done so well at Demo Day that they went back, and in India they were able to get like a beautiful office and hire all these people. Yeah. Whereas if they'd stayed in San Francisco, they'd have a tiny little condo somewhere.
I mean, like $2 million in most of these countries is like 40-person teams. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. So there's a financial arbitrage thing going on there too. So yes, so I really focused on that, and then I did that for 5 batches, and by the end, I'm very proud to say that the founders that I invested in the early ones were really helping me get introductions and nudging the founders of the later batches to come and talk to me.
Yeah, these are like tight-knit communities,
really.
Yeah.
So that's been great, yeah.
Is there a country or like a region where you're like, okay, this is like, like maybe India's now done and like over-invested in, like, I'm not saying it is, but potentially, is there other countries and regions where you're like, okay, there's like great opportunities, there's good growth, there should be more investments?
The stuff that's most exciting right now, but I don't know if a window of sorts is closing, is all the Latin America opportunities, because
I mean, SoftBank just raised like a $5 billion fund for it.
Right, like people are seeing that, and you see the valuations going up, and
I feel like that opportunity is gone. Like, it's not like a cheap opportunity.
Yeah, right. It's not cheap anymore. Yeah. There's not an arbitrage thing. The companies raising in Africa, focused on Nigeria, Kenya, whatever, there's still not as many established players to lead the A, to lead the B.
I see.
And so, which has a downward effect on caps and prices when you're investing at the angel stage. So, but that said, like even just the last 12 months, that's changing. A bunch of the companies that I invested in years ago that have been performing really well are now raising price rounds from funds that didn't even exist years ago.
Do you find like, I mean, you've got enough of a portfolio. Like, do you find most of these global companies, when they're going to the A and B, they're doing like local funds, or they're mostly coming back to Silicon Valley and getting like a Sequoia and Andreessen Horowitz?
This is a great question about fundraising in general. Like even within the U.S., there's a company I'm talking to now that they're mostly talking to like Texas-based VCs because they're based in Texas, but they still want to come and talk to the VCs in California because, okay, maybe there's an opportunity there, but also it's a great learning opportunity to practice your story, to get feedback on the pitch.
I understand they should speak to everyone, but like, do you see, like, is it like 50% get done in Silicon Valley versus outside, or is it more like 80% get done in like the local region?
Yeah, I'm seeing most of them happen with like local funds that are focusing on, the new opportunities over there. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, well, there seems like there's often like this kind of trend where like a global company like a LATAM or like nowadays often Africa company comes and they're like, we're building X for this country. Like everyone right now is building Plaid for LATAM or Africa or whatever. Or, like Rappi was like a Postmates for LATAM. Yep. So do you find that those companies, like when they come to Silicon Valley, do better? Like does that pitch resonate better?
I think it depends on how much the founders buy into the mental construct itself. So if the founder literally thinks that they're building, Postmates for Latin America or Twilio for Africa, that's a problem. Because like it's a different market. There's different needs. Okay. If they understand that this
you don't think that can work? Like if they're literally like, I'm going to copycat this thing locally.
I'm skeptical of that. Okay. I think though that is a really useful construct for communicating with investors, communicating with people you're hiring. So long as there's also like this extra level of sophistication, which is that, of course, things have to be a little different.
Yeah. There needs to be a but.
Yeah, but it's not literally that. We can't just do SMS for Africa. We have to also, because for whatever reason, that's not what they need there.
Sure.
It has to be more than that. I mean, Rappi does a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not just a literal adaptation of the idea.
So let's say you are from one of these countries. You feel like you can get a seed round. You come to Silicon Valley. Like, do you think you can get that done without being like a Y Combinator or like some other accelerator to introduce you to the network?
I meet with a lot of early stage companies inside, outside YC, and it's not so much about like what the metrics are, so much as does this seem like is there good founder market fit? Does it seem like these founders are good fit for this thing that they're going after? Can I see them working on this for a long time? Can I see their passion growing for this as hopefully it gets more interesting and complicated? And then are they earnestly and honestly trying to prove out the basic hypothesis or disprove the hypothesis of the business?
Yeah.
Or, does it feel like it's like startup kabuki? And they thought this was a good idea, or someone suggested it to them, and they're kind of like playing it startup. Those are kind of like my first pass filters that I look for.
Do you think it's like the metrics required to like for the exact same company in the US versus like in a global like, do you think the metrics required are like slightly higher, or you think it doesn't matter that much?
I think it shouldn't matter, but I think it does. Because if you're an investor based in the Bay Area and you're talking to a company that is, I don't know, doing some sort of new medical device that's going to be focused on Mexico as their initial market, you don't know that much about that market. So it's going to be harder the founders have to be that much more impressive. The attraction has to be that much more detailed and impressive because you're not maybe going to feel the same familiarity with the market. I think a lot of times angel investors, they meet with a startup and maybe they took the meeting because they feel like they already have some familiarity with the market. Either they did a company there, or they've got a friend that made an investment there, or whatever. And so that kind of buoys their discussion with them. But if you don't have that, then the other stuff has to be particularly
when
gripping.
I started investing globally, like my whole mindset was I don't want to invest globally because I was like, I don't know these markets.
Right.
Like who knows whether someone's just making some stuff up, right? You don't know. Whereas like, when someone comes to you with like a B2B US SaaS company, you can judge that very quickly.
Yeah, you can just connect the dots and see where it's going to go.
But traction is a really good proxy. Right?
Yes.
So you did this investing thing, then you kind of joined YC as a visiting partner. How different is that? Is it like basically you're an investor, but now you have like a group, or is it like a super different experience?
Well, it's pretty different. As an angel investor, going to demo day, your job is to hear all these pitches and try to identify like the best ones and invest in those. And you're totally like a front runner, bandwagon type person. Whereas YC, you invest in all these companies, and then no matter what, we work with them.
And so you're saying alignment is like a bit better.
Yeah, the alignment's like I'm not just in it to win it. I'm in it like we've already made the commitment. Now let's find out what's really going on with this company. The application's imperfect. The interview process is imperfect, and let's help you figure out how to get to the next milestone.
What's like the one bit of value that they provide now that they didn't do for you?
I think the group office hours is pretty amazing. So
So what is the structure of a group office? I've actually never done it either. It's back in 2009, they had nothing.
It's a handful of companies that are in like a small group, and they meet every couple weeks. And what's nice,
same companies every time.
Yeah, what's nice about that is you get to know a little bit about what the other companies are going through. But you also get to hear how the partners talk to the other companies about what they're going through. And I can see like the scales falling from people's eyes as they realize, oh my gosh, they have the same problem I have. I'll go talk to them about that. And especially the very first couple weeks when there's just this moment of recognition, this light bulb of I'm not alone anymore going off.
It's also like a competitive process, right?
There's like, a little bit of that.
I mean, I heard that from like YC founders. Like they're like, oh, that person was like, this far ahead. Like I really need to work harder.
I know. I felt some of that when I did YC. Just
not in a bad way.
I just think that's evolutionarily how it's easy to get kind of like lured into a competitive feeling. But that doesn't yield great outcomes, I don't think, in the big picture.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like all of these kind of instincts that we have often have like a positive and negative side to them, and like competitiveness is like I probably can't think of one founder that's not competitive.
Right, but competitive in their market, but competitive with startups that are just like competing for like partner attention or something like that.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean, there's like pointless, but there's also just like, hey, I need to work harder. I need to up my level. I need to like understand.
Absolutely, the best founders are competitors. They compete hard. But it's targeted. It's targeted competition. And
if you were going to start a new startup, what bank would you use?
I'd use Mercury, of course.
Why is that?
Well, we did our banking with Chase. This was 8 years ago. And every month I'd have to send out millions of dollars worth of checks to the ad networks that we worked with. And I would have to go to the Chase bank in person and sit down with them and like do the wire transfers. And it was frustrating. And so, yes, it took a while to get the account set up. We didn't get like any sort of like financing or credit cards from them. It was just debit cards. Yeah, it was really frustrating sending those big payments out.
All right, Brad. Well, it's been wonderful having you. You've been very insightful. I'm sure everyone
Thanks for having me.
will get a lot out of this, but thanks for coming.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.